Hello, this is your evil twin welcoming you to Let's Play TimeShift, a game developed by Saber Interactive. TimeShift was published by Sierra and released in 2007, but appropriately enough for a game about time travel, it actually has a rather complicated history. It was originally supposed to be published by Atari and released in 2006. At that point in its development, it had a colourful steampunk art style and rather bizarre-looking guns and characters. In this earlier unreleased version of the game, you're supposed to play Michael Swift, an Air Force test pilot who's mourning the death of his daughter. Swift gets recruited by a secret government research project into time travel. Michael Swift is supposed to be played by Hollywood actor Dennis Quaid.
Look, Doctor, is it? You and I both know that this is a suicide mission. Sorry, tell your boss I'm just not interested.
Initially reluctant, Swift eventually agrees to wear the time suit in the hope that he can alter history and avert the death of his daughter. The head of the project, Dr. Crone, also wears a time suit that's designed to protect him from any accidental changes to history. If the timeline gets screwed up, he'll be the one guy that knows how to put things right. But he's got no intention of putting things right. The changes to history result in Crone becoming a powerful dictator. Of course, you could have guessed something like that was going to happen if you knew that Dr. Crone was being played by badass Michael Ironside.
What the? Who? Thanks for sitting in for me. I love it when a plan comes together.
Saber Interactive spent years working on the game, but by the time it was ready for release, the graphics were beginning to look a bit dated. Bear in mind that this is 2006, the same year that Gears of War came out. A demo was released, but it didn't do very well, so Atari realised they had a flop on their hands. They sold the publishing rights to Sierra. Sierra gave Saber Interactive another year to work on the game, but they asked them to completely overhaul everything. As well as enhancing the graphics engine of the game, it was also decided that most gamers at home wouldn't really be interested in the steampunk art style, or in a hero who's mourning the death of his daughter. So when the game finally came out in 2007, it had far more sophisticated graphics and effects, but it had none of the cutscenes and dialogue with Michael Ironside and Dennis Quaid. Instead, you're a mute protagonist. In fact, you're a physicist wearing a special suit, helping a rebellion overthrow a technologically advanced dictatorship. It's like Half-Life 2. You've got regenerative shields, radar, and blue glowing sticky grenades like in Halo, and everything has a dark grey, gritty art style like Gears of War. Yeah, and the sad thing is that the game's actually got far less plot than any of those three games. One thing that TimeShift does still have going for it is its time shifting, the central mechanic. You can slow or freeze the world around you while you run and shoot at normal speeds. It's pretty interesting, and it's rather different to bullet time and things like Fear and Max Payne. You can also reverse time to get out of tricky situations and solve puzzles. Now, for me, TimeShift is a bit of a guilty pleasure. I know it's a rip-off of a bunch of other games, but that doesn't change the fact that it's really quite fun. I'm a sucker for anything that lets you mess about with time. There's also the fact that this is a game developed by Russians, and Russians are really good at atmosphere. Even if you tell them to make City 17 given the Gears of War treatment, they still put their own stamp on it. Thus, although most of the steampunk stuff is gone, they've still got a bit of diesel punk and deco punk in there, which does still add a bit of flavour. So yeah, TimeShift. It's a lot of fun if you remember to use the time powers. It's just a shame it's not as interesting or original as it might otherwise have been. Now, whether you play TimeShift on the PC or on the console, you get a game that is properly tailored to the platform that you're playing on. The PC version's got a whole bunch of graphical options. In fact, it's actually got 4 different options for shadows, which is crazy. So yeah, depending on the power of your computer or your personal preferences, there's a whole number of options that you can adjust. And even on low or medium settings, the game looks quite nice. On maximum settings, it actually still looks pretty good, even though the game came out 5 years ago. Audio settings actually have separate sliders for music, voice, and sound effects. I like to turn the sound effects down a bit because otherwise they tend to drown out the music. The music's actually got an option to play in 5.1 surround sound, which is pretty nifty. Now, when it comes to the gameplay options, you can turn off the blood and gore, you can turn on subtitles, you can get rid of the heads-up display, you can get rid of gameplay hints, you can get rid of just bits of the heads-up display, you can get rid of camera shaking during explosions. It's got a slider for field of view, you can turn it down to 75 or put it all the way up to 120. Personally, I like a field of view of 85. Now, when it comes to your reticule, you can choose between a thick reticule or a thin little crosshair. I actually prefer the thick reticule. You can fully rebind the keyboard controls. Some people moan that there's too many buttons to remember in this game. What with the time powers, grenades, melee, zooming in. I like to bind the time powers to the 4, 5 and 6 keys. You can only carry 3 weapons at a time in this game, so you only need numbers 1, 2 and 3 for your weapons, so why not have your time powers be your 4th, 5th and 6th weapons? So unusual is that you aim your gun with the E key rather than the right mouse button. That's because the right mouse button is used for weapon secondary fire. You can quick save and quick load in this game, you're not dependent on checkpoints. It's a shame how few PC games do that nowadays. Now I'm going to be starting a new game on the middle difficulty setting, Skilled. It's worth bearing in mind that the difficulty modes on PC are actually tougher than their equivalent modes in the console versions of the game. What you're looking at isn't easy, normal and hard mode, it's more like normal, hard and very hard. So yes, the middle setting, Skilled, will provide more than enough challenge. You see here a loading screen. Usually they show you gameplay tips, but they do sometimes give you tidbits of background information. I guess because the game itself doesn't actually tell you very much story. So let's sit back and watch the opening cutscene.
The entire building has collapsed, and it was on top of a huge underground facility. This might be the cause of our citywide power outage.
You needed to see me, Dr. Crone? What are you doing in the Alpha suit? What's going on? Ow! Ah!
It must have been some kind of massive explosion. If anyone was inside, I don't see how they could have survived.
Identification accepted.